It's Wednesday, August 6th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, preparing for, living through, and living after a wildfire. We have voices from this province and right across the country. Experts and survivors all intimately know about wildfires and their impacts. Top story at cbc.ca/NL, whether or not cooperating in fight against 3 raging wildfires in NL. Dry conditions, high temperatures, and no precipitation are challenges. As you heard in the news there with Sarah, right? 106, and also this morning too from the news, 196 fires so far this summer compared to 58 last year at this time. Fire ban in effect until September 7th. If you violate that for the fire ban, $1,000 fine, and as the Premier was saying, that might go up. Joining me, folks, we've got a full show for you. Like I said, we're talking to folks here in the province and across the country. It's going to be fast-moving, lots of voices, lots of expertise, lots of folks who have an understanding of what it is like to live through and rebuild after a wildfire. Joining me here in the studio, we have Deputy Chief Ian Green, Support Services, St. John's Regional Fire Department. Hello. Thanks for coming in.
Good afternoon.
And Carissa Brown, Biogeography Professor from Memorial University. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks, Adam.
Deputy Chief, I'll start with you. Just listening to the news there, even reports of 3 bonfires last night.
That's right, yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
I'm taken back by it, especially with all the media attention that the fires have been getting lately. The fire ban and the amount of media it's gotten. Why are the citizens still having bonfires? I have no idea.
I don't know how to make the message any more crystal clear. But what's the message, again, from you as a firefighter to the people of this province? The
message I would like to relay is not to have these backyard bonfires. There's no reason for them. We've given lots of other options. You can use propane fire pits, so your traditional log fire or wood-fired open pit fire, is really no need for it.
Yeah, so when we say fire ban, exactly, just remind us what we mean, what it is.
So what the fire ban is putting in place is no open fires, no wood burning or coal fired appliances are to be used. You can use propane, one of those you get at one of the Costco or Walmart. You can use the propane fired fire pits, but just not anything wood burning that would produce a flanker or could start a fire somewhere else.
All right. It sounds pretty simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Folks, it's pretty simple. Carissa, people are worried, they're stressed, right? It's dry, temperatures are higher. I think about fuel for a fire. There are some things that folks can do. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I think, so, I'm stressed as well. I live on the Avalon. We all smell the smoke. We're getting the emergency alerts. And so sometimes some of the ways that we can kind of mitigate that stress is to figure out what we have control over when it comes to a wildfire. So the 3 ingredients that it takes to build a fire are fuel, heat, which is our ignition source, and oxygen. So if we think about building a bonfire, which we absolutely are not doing these days, we need nice dry wood. We need a bit of kindling to get that fire going. We need that kindling to be nicely connected. And then we need an ignition source. What we can control as people that are living here in Newfoundland and Labrador is we can control our own ignition sources, absolutely, by respecting the fire ban, by just thinking really logically about what we're doing day to day. And we can control fuel on our own properties. And so what we want to do is kind of the opposite of a bonfire. We want to break apart those ingredients that we need. So we want that fuel to not be connected, not be touching our home. So that means that, and I think we're going to talk more about this later, but thinking about fire smarting our properties and taking away that what would be kindling in a bonfire. But we also can think about fuel across the island. We do live in a forest landscape that has adapted to thousands of years of fire. And so we do have species that are more flammable than others. And so one of the reasons that it's a bit hard to get a handle on how fires behave on the island is we don't necessarily have a really accurate idea of exactly what kind of fuel is on our landscape. And so some of the work that we're starting to do in collaboration in the Department of Geography led by Ben Misiak and Lucas Braho at Canadian Forest Service and student Scout Quinn is trying to get a better idea of what that fuel load is on the island. So if we think about the whole island as a potential bonfire source, how much of that wood is there? How connected is it? What kind of moisture might it hold?
When we were preparing for this show, you were sending me some maps, right? You sent me
I am a geographer.
You are a geographer. You sent me shocker, right? The geographer sent some maps. You sent me one about the historic of like what we've been used to. And it was certain colors. Mm-hmm. And then we were looking at some of the big days when the fires started, and I'm assuming including now. Can you just talk about that difference?
Sure. So historically, if we think about those ingredients for fire, fuel, heat, and oxygen, the way that we predict fire risk in any area is to use an index called the Fire Weather Index. And fuel is a big part of that. So what fuel is on the landscape? And then what's the weather been like? What's the wind been like? How dry is that fuel? And how likely is it to ignite and then spread a fire? How quickly might that fire spread? Historically, during the early months of the summer and the late spring, the fire weather index, or the fire risk is maybe a bit more digestible way to think about it. The fire risk for the island of Newfoundland has been extremely low because we've got these really wet forests. If we look at the mid-May map for the island of Newfoundland, a lot of it is red and orange, which is very unusual. So that means we have more of a risk for fires happening on the island, and we saw that in May in Adams Cove and Holyrood then as well. And if we looked at that map today, it would also be lit up in all sorts of warm colors.
Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Brad Glynn on the line, Executive Director of Lifewise. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Adam. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. Mental health is on my mind, right? The folks we talked, I've just mentioned, some folks are scared. There's anxiety. Lifewise, organization that provides peer support. There's the Warm Line. Talk to us a bit about some of the discussions that are going on and the support you folks can provide.
I think what we're hearing, obviously, as your guests were speaking about, there's a lot of fear, and those people in the immediacy of it are impacted so greatly that there's also the inability to remove yourself from it, because even if you're going to stations like Purcellville and Victoria, everyone is in it. Yeah. And there's that intensity to that. So what peer supporters are offering, what peer supporters are hearing is just the fear, is the isolation, is the unknown. When you look at these situations, they're in the now, but they're attached to the past because there are properties, there are things we care about in this, where our memorabilia are. And then there's the future. You listen to the Premier and the Minister speak yesterday about, house insurance and covering the future. So all these stresses are compounded, and it's so hard to think straight and make good decisions in those moments that what our peer supporters are able to offer people is the ability to just slow down, and someone who's separated from it and just listen, because you don't need to struggle with mental health or mental illness to need support in a time like this. And our peer supporters are able to just hear people and listen, and really actively listen and talk through things, and then ask some kind of strong questions to them to allow them to frame what they need to do for the next 6 hours, for the next day, for the next week, to set themselves up as best they can in these very difficult moments.
Yeah, and like you said, for helping set folks up, because like if they phone the Warm Line, you get that peer support, and then if there's extra things needed, they can be kind of directed and shown a path for extra support and to be offered a path of where to go, right?
Absolutely. So our peer support is first about, offering shared lived experiencing and listening to people's story and helping with them. But inevitably, our peer supporters are an absolutely phenomenal resource for letting people know where they can navigate other things. We've got a huge resource bank of things available throughout the province, having staff from here to Happy Valley, Goose Bay, of real practical things related to food insecurity, related to housing, related to emergencies. I'd also, say that we have our general warm line, but at a time like this, we also have a dedicated first responders warm line. The number for that's 1709-237-4180, because I think about the first responders dealing with this situation, particularly volunteer firefighters. They're likely fighting fires that are impacting their own properties, their neighbors' properties, their mom's properties, their siblings' properties. So the stress that those people feel, our first responders are people who have direct lived experience working as first responders, so they'd also be able to speak to those folks who are encountering these stresses personally and professionally.
All right, Brad, before I let you go, give us those numbers one more time. The first responder number?
Absolutely. So the first responder warm line is 1709-237-4180, and our provincial warm line number is 1709-753-2560, operational from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., 365 days a year.
Thank you so much, Brad Glynn.
All right, thanks, Adam.
Brad Glynn there, Executive Director of Lifewise, Deputy Chief Ian Green. How are firefighters doing right now? We mentioned that warm line there, right, which is needed. Right. But how are folks doing fighting these fires? And you're connected to Carbonear as well, right?
Yes, yeah. I volunteer with the Carbonear Fire Department as well, and I attended the first major fire down in Adams Grove. And so when you're down in these situations, you rely on your training. You put the wet stuff on the hot stuff. But when you get a chance to kind of reflect and pull back is when, a lot of that stressors come to you. And, last few days, now with this flare-up, the same thing. We have members of our Carbonear department that they have family members down that way. They have houses and their moms and dads and sisters and brothers and stuff. And so they are, fighting a fire in a different community, but heavily related to it. So it is very stressful. You can see it on the face of the crews that are down there. I mean, I think there's 8 or 9 different departments involved at any given time, and it's nice to see the communities come together in times like this. But it's also very stressful to the individuals themselves, right? So
yes, it's about folks taking care of each other and then having those supports afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the words they used to be used like decompress and stuff, but it's just like folks to talk to get the help you need.
Yep, exactly.
And just briefly, the role for an urban, like a municipal firefighter compared to the forestry. Like, tell folks about what your role is.
Well, it varies.
And there's a gray area too, right?
Yeah. So, like when we're dealing with forest fires as they encroach on a town. Structural firefighters, regular, volunteer firefighters. There's a buffer zone there, the urban interface where the forest meets the town, and so our role is to suppress the fire as it encroaches on the buildings. We don't generally go way back into the forest and fight it. That's the forestry's department. Usually, there's a buffer zone there of about 300 meters that we try to protect. So it doesn't transfer from the forest to the structures.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before in the show the acronym. I think it's like the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface. Right. So you guys are right there on the WUI.
That's right.
Trying to protect people and property.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Let's go back to the phones. The Insurance Bureau of Canada, Edward Zhakata, is on the line. The IBC's Manager of Consumer and Industry Relations, Atlantic Region. Hello.
Hi, Adam. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. A question for you. We're here, we've had already this summer loss of homes and cabins in Newfoundland and Labrador. We're waiting to hear more confirmations around loss and damage right now with the ongoing fires. What do people need to know about insurance and making claims? Like, what should they keep in mind if they are in that, what should be an unthinkable situation, but is unfortunately rather thinkable right now?
Okay. First of all, Adam, I just want to say our thoughts go out to everybody who's affected by this fire. Unfortunately, it's seeming that we're having more and more fires. I think last year we had about 58 fires this time of the year, and this year we have about 198 fires. So first and foremost, if an evacuation order is issued in your area, please respect the evacuation order and work with the authorities that are there and make sure your family is safe. And then once your family is safe, you can get in touch with your insurance representative They generally have a 24/7 line that is available, and then they will review the coverages that are available on your policy.
What kind of if someone loses a home, how do they start to piece that together for going through a policy? Like what should they remember? What kind of a list should they make?
Oh, okay. That's a very good question there, Adam. So when you get in touch with your insurance representative, they will analyze the situation that you're in and then review the coverages that are available on your policy. Once they review the coverages that are available, you need to document everything that has been affected by your fire. And then they will ask you to complete what's called a proof of loss, which will be submitted to the insurance company so that they can pay you out.
Yeah, so proof of loss. So we're talking, it's pictures of inside your house or videos or anything that can prove if you're talking about your flat screen TV to your art to your sofa set and everything else. Or if it's a whole property that's gone, if there's vehicles and ATVs and skidoos and the whatnot, you need to be able to show somehow that you've had these in order to move the claim forward.
Exactly, Adam. That's correct.
Is there anything else do you think that people should know for making insurance claims in the event of loss of property or damage to property?
I don't want to inundate people with a lot of information. So what I would say is if you go on our website, ibc.ca, we have now put a very big yellow banner at the very top of our website. And if you click that, we have a frequently asked questions section, and we go over everything. We talk about fridge, food damage. We talk about things that insurance will cover, how you can file a claim, all the way to how much is covered on your insurance policy. So it's a very good list of frequently asked questions. And if you don't find an answer for what you're looking for on that section of our website, you can also get in touch with us on our phone line. It's 1-844-227-5422. The number again is 1-844-227-5422.
Edward, thank you so much. It's really helpful information.
No, thank you very much, Adam. And just as a closing, I just want to thank everybody who's helping out with these fires, and stay safe, people.
All right, Edward Zhakata there, IBC's Manager of Consumer and Industry Relations. I'll go back to the Deputy Chief briefly. When a fire hits a home, right? There's a range. You can have smoke damage.
That's right.
And you can lose the whole thing. Like I'm thinking, we have a guest that we'll be speaking to in a minute about, like, for example, Fort McMurray and the wildfires there. Just what do you see when you go in for, like, what can be salvageable and for folks?
Well, our first, we have three main goals when it comes to a structure fire. One is saving life. Then it's save property. And then, of course, the environmental concerns.
Yeah.
So, when I call it triaging, similar to what they do in the medical field, you're triaging the structure. Can it be saved? Is there any imminent loss of life? Is there someone inside that we need to save? Once that's established, then you go and look at the property. Can we save it? Is it going to affect other structures around it? So that house might not be saved, but we still have to mitigate the fire in order to save structures around it, keep it from spreading. So, and damage can range from just melted siding to, complete loss of structure.
Right.
So I know in Adams Cove, that's one thing we had to do was literally triage houses. Can we save that one? Can we not save it? Will it impact structures next to it? And then, down there especially, where there's no hydrants. In cities like St. John's and here, we're lucky enough that we have a lot of hydrants around the region. Those smaller towns don't. And so you're kind of judging how much water you have on hand and can, you make a good fight on the fire. Right?
And these are the active decisions that you make, right?
Absolutely,
as you look at what is going on. On the line, Therese Greenwood, author and survivor of the Fort McMurray wildfires from 9 years ago. Therese, welcome back to the program. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, it's a pleasure to join you. If anything I can say can help some people who are going through this, I'm happy to share.
I mean, the conversation today with 3 active wildfires in the province, we're having a conversation about preparation, what we can do to try to prevent, and then it's a conversation of living through something and rebuilding. And we touched on this the last time you were on the show, but if you don't mind, talk to us just about the days after the wildfire 9 years ago, and coming to terms with it and trying to pick up the pieces.
sure. I mean, it's definitely a journey. It was great to hear the chief and the insurance person giving some good advice there. The people who are going back to the communities, you're all going to be in a state of shock when you go back. One half of your mind is kind of doing this logical, following the advice that people are giving you. The other half of your mind is staring down into a giant pit of ashes that used to be your home. So you're kind of in a state of shock at the same time as you're faced with this incredible financial burden if you've lost your home, even if you have good insurance, because there's phases and things will take, a long time to get through. One thing that helped me was I was writing everything. I used to be a reporter, so it came naturally, but writing everything down that people are telling you, because your short-term memory is going to be just jammed up with things. And so you're going to need to do things that are going to help you navigate through. You're also going to have to wait longer than you would like, depending on the community. But when you're returning to your community, the infrastructure there has also been damaged. So whether you've lost your home or you've not lost your home, there's a water tower, it may have burned down, a water treatment plant, a pharmacy, a gas station, grocery store, hospital, medical facility. All of those things need to be up and running before all the residents come back, because you're going to need to gas up your car. You're going to need to fill your prescription. And even if you're in a smaller community that doesn't have those kinds of resources, you still have to look at your wells. They could be full of fire retardant spray, which is, highly toxic. You're going to have to look at the roads and the bridges, because those are all impacted by extreme, and the heat from the current type of wildfires we're getting is just so hot that it damages things that you, like concrete and steel and all kinds of things, are going to need to be re-examined. So you really have to psych yourself up that this is going to be a bit of a journey, and you're also going to be rebuilding in a place where you're not the only one rebuilding. So it puts the carpenters, the plumbers, scaffolders, the roofers, everybody needs the same resources. So the communities are going to have to come together and figure out how they're going to share that and how everybody's going to get along.
And what did you do for taking care of yourself on the mental health side of things?
For me, it was it actually was a creative outlet that I pursued in terms of my writing. And for some reason, immediately after the fire, I just had to write. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And some of my friends who were painters, poets, they had the same experience. And one of the communities that I talked to when I was going through it was Lac-Mégantic in Quebec, of course, who had that horrible explosion. And they have had an incredible outburst of creativity since then. Like the community has really invested in art. And some of it is about the fire, and some of it is about healing, and some of it is just, human expression. Lac-Mégantic also helped us in Fort McMurray, I think, because they had such a tragic loss of life there. It was just incredible. So one of the things that we were able to celebrate in Fort McMurray was, that we avoided that kind of a massive death toll, frankly. So there was a lot of gratitude that people obeyed the officials, followed all the safety rules, evacuated the community in a very orderly fashion. So there was a lot of community pride from that, and also a feeling of, we dodged a bullet. So that did help people, I think, in terms of the healing process.
Therese, remind us about the book you wrote, the title again, before I let you go.
Sure. It's called What You Take With You, Wildfire Family and the Road Home. And I think some of your listeners will identify with it, because it's about the box of things I grabbed as I was running out the door with 15 minutes to go for the evacuation, and sort of how I discovered, looking at them, that these items all meant something, had messages for me from the people who had given them to me about strength, resilience, love, family, that sort of thing. So I hope it may help a few people as they're trying to navigate what they're going through.
Oh, I think it will. Therese Greenwood, thank you so much for coming back on the program. Your words are very helpful.
Well, and good luck to everyone in Newfoundland.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Therese Greenwood there, author and survivor of the Fort McMurray wildfires back in 2016. Before we go to our next guest on the phone, I want to go back to Carissa Brown here, biogeography professor from Memorial University. Dry, sunny, temperatures elevated. Now, when we look at the climate that is changing and has changed, some folks might be like, well, this is the new normal every summer. But there's an unpredictability to climate change, correct? Can you tell us just briefly a bit about that?
Absolutely. So there can be a feeling that climate change just means that it's going to be hotter and hotter and drier. But all around the world and here in Newfoundland, what we're actually expecting is to have these anomalies. So a summer like this summer where it's unusually dry, which then makes the environment really susceptible to wildfire. But then we will have summers where it's very cold and wet, and maybe we have a deluge of rain that summer, and then we're maybe thinking about flooding and where's that water going to go. And so when climate change isn't just something that's marching in a straight line up a graph, getting warmer and warmer, we have kind of ups and downs popping around that slow march. So we're going to have more of these extremes and more of these kind of unexpected seasons. That doesn't necessarily reassure folks because we like to know what we're planning for. But a lot of the ways that we can plan for a summer like this summer applies to other kinds of natural hazards that might happen in Newfoundland in the future, like hurricane seasons, like flooding, like heavy snow years, like snowmageddon. So emergency preparedness applies to all of those different kinds of hazards.
Yeah, and knowing it might not be next summer, but the heat will be back.
Yes.
Because the average is
Certainly.
increasing, right,
Yeah.
as we march to 1.5 and beyond, depending on what happens.
Yeah. So how do we plan for next time?
Yeah.
If we're looking ahead to more fires in the future.
Joining us on the line, the Mayor of Jasper, Richard Ireland. Mayor Ireland, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, good morning, Adam. Happy to help.
Thinking it's been just over a year now for yourself and your community in Jasper for the Jasper wildfire. Can you briefly remind folks what happened and what you led and others led your community through a year ago?
What happened, of course, was fire on the landscape surrounding our community. Within hours, we issued an evacuation order. All of our 5,000 residents and perhaps about 20,000 visitors evacuated in the middle of the night over the course of about 5 hours. And within less than 40 hours, that wildfire impinged on the town. We saved 70% of the town, or the firefighters did, including all of our critical infrastructure. But through the course of it, roughly 30% of the town was lost to the wildfire. And now, 1 year on, we are in a state of recovery, and we are surrounded by the remnants, but working forward with optimism and resilience.
As mayor, in those early days, how do you and the folks around you, how do you move forward and start to figure out a plan to try to recover?
That is an excellent question. And I mean, you move forward day by day, taking the work piece by piece. We were fortunate in the sense that in all of our pre-planning exercises, and this is focused mostly on response, we had built really strong working relationships with our partners, particularly in Parks Canada. We went through unified command to deal with the response, and we just copied that methodology and that approach into recovery. So we now have something called the Joint Recovery Coordination Center, where, again, we are working with our partners in Parks Canada to take a unified approach to our recovery. It's long and arduous, but it is working, and we're proceeding down that road, and we will eventually achieve the recovery that we need.
Is there anything, if you had a time machine, that you wish you would have known for your previous self compared to who you are now and what you've learned through all this process?
Of course, you can't go through something like this, an event of this significance, and not learn some lessons. What I would share firstly, though, is for others who look at Jasper as a learning opportunity. Look to our successes, absolutely. I mean, as I said, we did an awful lot of pre-planning, preparation, including mitigation efforts on the landscape, because we knew the risk here was the risk of wildfire. It may be different in other communities. And the relationships that we built were just phenomenally important. But I think one thing that in retrospect we realize now is that communities are well served by planning for after the event. So things as simple as reentry. What will be the conditions for reentry to invite evacuated community members back into their community? What do you need to get started? How are you going to process that? But there are so many things. We could spend the rest of the morning, I think, talking about lessons that we have learned. But it is in part preparing your residents for the really long, arduous task of the rebuild. It just doesn't happen, and I think communities, leadership in various municipalities, perhaps can spend some time in communicating to residents just what a long-term task it is to rebuild and start to set expectations for people. Recovery is not a straight line. It's not easy or quick. Resilience is necessary, but it has to morph eventually into endurance. And people have to realize that there is a lot of work after the event to get back to where you once were.
You mentioned the recovery and where things are for Jasper right now. So when you walk through your community, like when you did it today or yesterday or this week, and you notice that recovery, what's that like for you?
It is so encouraging now to see new foundations going in, people with footings in the ground, some with foundations. It is, as I say, it's been a slow process. We're now a year out. But we have one apartment complex under construction now. We have some condominiums. We have a number of individual homes. We have businesses in a pop-up village that was, the outcome of our Joint Recovery Coordination Center. We saw the need for getting business back on the ground, and all of that activity buoys my spirit and knows that, and it forces me to realize that over time, with the right attitude, we, of course, will recover. And so I look every day for these signs of renewal, and I see them springing up just like the grass in the forest. And it's really encouraging.
Sir, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it's important for folks to get this type of perspective from a mayor like yourself, and for what you and your community have lived through, and and to hear about the rebuilding process. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Mayor of Jasper, Richard Ireland there. Let me go back to my guests in studio. Folks, any thoughts on either what Therese was saying or what the Mayor of Jasper was saying?
I think one thing I want to touch on that Mayor Ireland just said was all of the mitigation that was done before the fire, and what a big difference that meant. So going back to that idea of what can we do, what actions can we do to have more control over the situation, which I think will hopefully alleviate people's anxiety and stress. And those are things really that we can do to reduce that fuel and flammability of our own properties. And so I think folks, even just taking a cup of tea out into their yard and wandering around and thinking about, if a fire started nearby, how would it spread through my property, and what are the things that I could do to change that? And there's a lot of guidance online with the Fire Smart program that give a lot of good and easy to do things to help reduce the chance of your own property igniting.
Thank you for that, Carissa. Deputy Chief?
When it comes to the emergency management preparedness part of it, I think that when you do have a fire kind of encroaching on your town, pack a bag, medication. People often leave medications behind. Have supplies ready, and most importantly, adhere to the advice of the emergency management people.
Yeah, when I lived in Tokyo, with the earthquakes that could come there, we always had we had passports and all the important stuff in one spot, and then also we had enough some dried noodles and water and stuff to get us the thing there 72 hours just in case you're trapped.
Absolutely,
and it's a similar concept here for your go bag of your stuff together and provisions, just so if you got to go, you got enough there.
Exactly
For you.
Yep.
Right. You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Folks, today we are talking about wildfires, continuing coverage here for Newfoundland and Labrador. Yesterday was the full show. Today, the conversation is talking about everything from before, right? Preparing for them, living through them, and living after. And you're hearing from voices right across the country and here in this province. On the line now, Anabela Bonada, Managing Director, Climate Science Intact Center on Climate Adaptation. Anabela, thank you for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
We're listening to my guest Carissa there talking about some Fire Smart, which is great segue into yourself coming on for actions residents and communities can still take to protect their homes because across the country wildfire season ends in October, as you were mentioning to me yesterday in our back and forth emails. I'm wondering if you could tell us more about what folks can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot that people can do right now. Like, don't think, because you haven't been affected by wildfire yet that you're out of the woods. You could still be affected. So parts of the country are experiencing extended drought. That wildfire weather index is quite high in different parts of the country as well. So think of the things that you can do right now around your home. You don't have to go and replace your roof this year. You can do that next year. But right now, like as your guest said, take a walk around your yard, see what's flammable material. So look at your deck. Is there anything on your deck that you can just brush off, clean it off, cut your lawn up to 10 centimeters long, cut back any tree branches, especially any that might be overhanging over your roof. And move away wood piles, move away your barbecue as far away from your property as you can, depending on the size of your property, and of course in a way that doesn't influence your neighbors and put them at risk. But these are simple things that can be done right now, or if you're gardening this weekend, just kind of take out that mulch that you might have and put some non-combustible ground surface. So that can look like, mineral soil, rock. So you can replace that, and that can really help your property become more wildfire resilient from like embers approaching it and igniting those spaces.
And what about communities? Like whether it's fine, we talk about this summer and there's budgets and this and that and planning, but what should communities be looking at when it comes to being fire smart in Newfoundland and Labrador and across this country?
Yeah, there's a lot that communities can do, and of course some things will take longer planning and a bigger budget, but for the short term is just understanding where some areas of emergency shelter could be and that you could be taking in other communities. So even if your community is not necessarily at high risk of a wildfire occurring right now, you might have to take in evacuees from other communities. So where could they go? What kind of hotels could you open up? So that kind of like emergency management. But as communities think about how they're designed and what they have over the next few years, it's really important to have some fire breaks as much as possible close to, the infrastructure, such as like hospitals or schools. You want to make sure there's a bit of a fire break between that and forested or grassland regions. And just thinking about the design of communities. So hopefully starting to build away from where it's very high risk, thinking about access and egress routes. So again, this is a bigger infrastructure change, but some communities are just so heavily impacted by having just one route in and out of the community, and that can very quickly get shut down due to a wildfire, and then communities have to be helicoptered out.
Well, this is the Fort Mac story, right? I mean, you could in Fort Mac 9 years ago, you could either go north or you could go south, and that was it.
Absolutely, and so. And it's the story of what happened in Hawaii in 2023 as well, when people just couldn't get out and they got trapped in their cars. That hasn't happened here in Canada. It's extremely devastating. But ideally, we start to think that a little bit more, like routes that could be opened up in an emergency if people needed to get out of their community. Because, unfortunately, one road goes down, and that means you have the evacuees stuck. So just thinking about that, and maybe just one more, ensuring minimum water supply for firefighting. So that was an issue with the Halifax fire in 2023. They didn't have enough water for firefighting, so just always having that now in place, because we just don't know what each season is going to look like for wildfire and which communities could be impacted.
Is there anything else for advice for folks before I let you go, whether it's a big picture thinking for the future or something else?
Yes, and I think the messaging would be two things is, we're likely to see more and more of these kind of seasons. So after 2023, a lot of studies were done across Canada to what caused it and what the future looks like. And unfortunately, if we don't make any changes, when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, we're looking to more and more of these kind of wildfire seasons, like 2023, like this one in 2025. 2024 was quite bad, actually. We just didn't hear it in the way because we didn't have that intense wildfire smoke across the country, but it was a very bad season. So if we don't make changes, we'll continue to see this. So what that means is prepare as much as you can. Don't think that because you were not affected this year, you might not be affected in the next few years. So do everything possible to fire smart your home, to fire smart your community. Start with the easy actions that don't cost anything and slowly invest on some of the bigger actions so that you can really protect your home, your neighbors, and your community.
Anabela Bonada, Managing Director, Climate Science Intact Center on Climate Adaptation. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's before I go back to my guests in studio, Jenny Saulnier is on the line, wildfire survivor. Jenny lost her home in Nova Scotia in 2023. Hello, Jenny. Thank you for coming on the program.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Bring us back to. I hate asking this, but could we, bring us back to 2023 if you could, and just what you went through.
Well, it was a normal day. My son and my husband were off at a hockey party, and I was home here with my dog cooking dinner, and I knew that there was a fire, but it was fairly distant with a lake in between us. Not realizing so many dry conditions around us and the wind, regardless of how that fire started, the conditions around us made it perfect storm for a wildfire. So I was very quickly impacted and unexpectedly, so was very unprepared. I would say walking down my hallway and seeing the fire all of a sudden in my backyard without any warning, not even knowing that it was close, and then having to flee my home, and 5 minutes later my alarm sounded in my home saying that there was window break, right away, smoke, then fire. So I knew that my home was a victim of the wildfire. It was really unexpected, and I think more so the scary part is being unprepared whenever it happened.
Mm. Yeah, and you had to flee, and then, like you said, you got that notice, and then, then what happened? Where did you get? Where did you go for shelter, and how? What were the days and that followed like?
So I fled the community, but we were all stuck in traffic because we only had one way out. And with two communities trying to exit adjacent to each other on our main road, it was a standstill. Fire was raging behind us. 911 had no idea it was even where we were. They told us we would have to get out and go by foot. I knew that if we had to go by foot, we would have slim chance of getting out, all of us. I know there were seniors that weren't aware because there was no emergency alert let out while our community was burning. Community Facebook posts were how most residents were aware and then told their parents or other seniors to get out. We then went and fled. By the time I met my husband, by the time I got down the Hammonds Plains Road, I felt slight relief. We met with my brother in Fall River because that was going to be where we were going to go. But then there was a fire in Fall River. So that had started. So then we had to flee Fall River as well, scared, of course, that the wildfires were going to come there as well because you just never know where one could start at this point in the dry conditions. We went to the airport, then went back to my brother's home once we felt safe enough. But we kept our bags packed and at the door, car keys ready, gas tanks full, basically ready to just run again because we had no idea if one was going to come and if we were going to get notified. So we were constantly on alert ourselves.
I think there's a whole lot there to take in about the urgency and the unpredictability and to be prepared. We don't have too much longer, but I I'm just curious, you've been speaking out about this, and we're going to speak to someone with My Climate Plan shortly, but you've been sharing your story, and I'm just curious as to, and advocating, so just briefly tell us a bit about why you're talking about this and why you're advocating around wildfires.
I'm advocating around wildfires because I don't think that the province, the municipalities, even the federal government realize the amount of trauma and mental health that goes through all of the people that flee, not just people who lost their homes. It's about running for your life unexpectedly. We've had no updates from our municipality or provincial government here about, what they're going to do differently to make sure we don't experience the same thing at the drop of a hat unexpectedly without warning. I think the emergency alert system is a really, really great tool for them to use to keep residents aware. And I don't think it's being utilized enough. As scary as it is coming through, having information, even if it's not to be alert but to be cautious, I think is really important. Yeah.
Jenny Saulnier, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing what was obviously such a traumatic experience. I think it is very helpful for people here.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Jenny Saulnier there. Talking about 2 years ago in Nova Scotia, in her community in Nova Scotia, May of 2023, the Highland Park subdivision. Carissa Brown is still with me in studio, biogeography professor from Memorial University and Deputy Chief Ian Green, Support Services with St. John's Regional Fire Department. Folks, I think a lot of what we've heard through the show, a lot of what you've already said, a lot of what the other guests have been talking about, a lot of when you're listening to Jenny's story there, right? One way out. Wonder if we wait in traffic. Came unexpectedly. All of a sudden my backyard was on fire. Then it's communication. So there's a lot of themes here, and this is a Nova Scotia thing. Earlier we heard Jasper, we've heard Fort McMurray, and we're talking Newfoundland and Labrador here today. Any thoughts on the last little bits that you've both been listening to?
I think a big part of any of these situations is to be prepared going into them. Having those lines of communication and using the warning systems, testing those. I know every now and again when you get afraid because the alarm goes off, but that's a big part of the communications and getting that message out across to the masses of what's going on in your areas. Pre-planning. At all levels, from your own home to your yard, as was spoke on before about the Fire Smart program, cleaning brush away from your house, from your property, cleaning the gutters, because with the flankers that fly, it'll land on top of your roof and could ignite the debris in your gutters. Something simple as that. Because those mitigate the risks, right? Yeah,
because those flankers, it was a book I read a little while ago that compared it to, when you watch like a medieval movie, right? And you get the archers, that's a wildfire, right? The army is the wildfire and the flankers are the archers.
Right. And
those flankers are coming ahead or everywhere and sometimes jumping over folks and burning things.
And that's correct, yeah. And especially with the Newfoundland winds, you're pushing that firestorm ahead. Just doing those simple things, simple items around your house, like we spoke on earlier about just taking care of those little items, as well as having a pre-plan of where you're going to evacuate to, what you're going to take with you. Again, medications was a big one that came up in Adams Cove. People, you're leaving your house, and the last minute you're trying to grab things. You're grabbing the heirlooms, your pictures, and everything else. But it's going to take a while. It might be in the middle of the night. So if you have prescriptions
stuff ready,
right? Diabetics, blood pressure medications, you're going to need those. And sometimes, the drugstores aren't open. So just having those type of things ready to go, have a plan of where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And, speaking as a first responder, please, adhere to the first responders when they're asking you to leave and basically stay out of our way so we can do our job and help protect your town and your property.
Great message. Carissa?
Yeah, I mean, my heart was pounding listening to Jenny just then and imagining going through that. I think that, I commend Jenny for advocating for improving that communication. I would much rather get emergency alert for a fire in Grand Falls, Windsor, if they needed to use the provincial system, than for Grand Falls, Windsor not to get an emergency alert. So I'd happily have that little wake up start from my emergency alert going off if it meant that other people were getting better notice. So that an incident like Jenny experienced is a real good wake up call for folks at municipal and regional and provincial and federal levels to check in with their communication systems and improve them.
And those things take time. I know from experience that to get one of those public alerts out, it takes time because it has to be approved, proofread. It's not something that like Facebook Messenger where you can just press send and it gets sent. So people have to be aware of that too. That it might take a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour to get one of those alerts out. So and the system does work. As I was driving home yesterday from here, again I live in Carbonear, so as I'm driving through the range of Holyrood, alert comes up on both my phones because I have a personal one and a work one, and it's it's coming through the car and I can see what's happening. Then as I go up the Veterans Memorial Highway and I get closer to Carbonear into that zone, and I get the warning for Perry's Cove.
Great.
So it does work even as you're driving along, right? So
yeah, because the geo whatever it is, fencing or something.
Yeah.
That's my attempt at the complicated term there, folks. One more call before we go on the show. Adam Lynes-Ford is on the line, co-founder of My Climate Plan. Adam, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks, Adam. It's good to be here. Really thinking of everyone in Newfoundland right now.
Yeah, and thank you for. You're on the west coast of Canada, and just tell us briefly, what My Climate Plan does, and then some other helpful tips around wildfires and air quality. And we've got about 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So at My Climate Plan, we help people get as safe and prepared as possible for wildfires and other climate-related impacts. Impacts which, unfortunately, as we've been hearing from guests throughout the show, are just more and more common, and more of us are facing them in Canada. So we offer a personalized planning tool that helps you understand, one, what are the specific risks in my region? Fire, flood, storm, heat, those kinds of impacts. And then it gives you a step-by-step plan to protect your home, protect your health, your loved ones, your pets, your finances, all the things that, matter most to us. So the way to access that tool is to go to our website, myclimateplan.com, and enter your postal code, and it'll walk you through key actions you can take and send you a plan so that you can keep it and build on it. So that's all free and available online.
Yeah, I was doing it yesterday, right? I put my postal code in. It's really simple, and it talked about risks and everything here, and it is very helpful. So I thought that was quite something that you folks have there. Anything else on, you guys, there's advocating too, right? Because the bit, you helped me get in touch with Jenny Saulnier to talk about the wildfire. So we've got less than a minute, but just what's a message around advocating and the future for wildfires in Canada?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, the priority right now is keeping people safe in Newfoundland, especially those affected by the fires and the smoke. And then once the immediate danger passes, we need to confront the bigger picture. There's two main things there. So our wildfire fighters, like the deputy chief there in the studio, are on the first line of defense. We need to make sure that those folks have the resources they need to meet the growing challenge. And unfortunately, in many places in the country, they don't. So we need our governments to step up and make sure that they got the staffing and the equipment that they need. Second of all, we need to deal with that problem at the source by cutting the pollution that's heating the planet and supercharging these wildfires in the first place. And that's why we're pushing for a big investment in clean, affordable energy in Canada, energy that doesn't supercharge these fires and provides reliable power for everybody in the Atlantic and across the country.
Adam Lynes-Ford, thank you so much. It's My Climate Plan, folks. Thank you for taking time and for helping with this show and hooking me up with some folks.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. Final thoughts from both of you today. We've got 20 seconds each.
20 seconds, no problem. I think as we go through this fire season and plan for the next ones, that really planning as individuals and as families, having conversations with our households, looking around our properties, and advocating to our towns of what we can do to lower risk in the future is a really positive step.
Thank you, Carissa. Deputy Chief.
I was going to say the same thing. So,
ditto.
But also, again, just be aware of the first responders that are working in your areas. Please stay out of their way, and little acts of kindness go a long way too as well. So Just
And
keep everyone in mind.
Don't light a fire, please.
Yeah.
And obey the fire ban, folks. And I just got a note too for emergency fleeing. If you have to leave your home, have cash on hand. Someone who went through a 2013 flood just mentioned that. That is it for today's show. We are staying with wildfires, but we also, as needed, we also have a different topic tomorrow about public safety. It's in the news on social media as of late. We will talk all about from stats to the feeling of safety in our communities. That's tomorrow. Cheers.